It's Friday the 25th of October, and in 2 weeks I'm moving to the States, which means I have 2 weeks to finish this build. And yesterday evening I decided to open the engine. I only wanted to do one last task, and that was to simply exchange the pushrod tubes for new ones. The engine leaked in a lot of places, down here at the timing chain cover, at the oil pan, but was the worst at the bottom of the pushrod tubes. And unfortunately I didn't notice when I bought the bike that it had silicone in a lot of places where that didn't belong. You live and learn. And now I'm learning another lesson, and that is that old engines are basically like a can of worms. You address one problem and you find 3 others. The first problem that I encountered was that I couldn't separate the cylinder head from the cylinder. So I took everything out altogether. Cylinder head, cylinder and piston. And then fortunately my friend Nickel gave me the tip to put it in the vise like this and carefully try to separate the 2 parts with a rubber hammer. Fortunately, at some point that worked and I could separate the cylinder head from the cylinder. But now we get to the can of worms because I haven't even touched the pushrod tubes and just took a tiny peek at the cylinder wall, and we already have the next thing that needs to be addressed. As you can see, there's not much cross-hatching left at the cylinder walls, so we need to deal with that because proper cross-hatching is very important for the engine. It provides an even oil film around the cylinder wall, and that helps with a lot of things. The main ones are that it reduces friction between the piston rings and the cylinder wall. Then it also helps to seal that area between the piston rings and the cylinder wall, which helps with compression. And the constant oil flow also helps to cool the engine, so it's definitely a detail that shouldn't be overlooked. But now I'm a little bit in a predicament. I bought this bike because at the beginning of the project I didn't dare to touch the engine, and I thought by spending a little bit more on a well-running bike I would get around that. Now I would probably say that with a bike that is 50 years old and has 100,000 kilometers on the clock, you don't get around touching the engine. And now so far into the project I would like to do the engine, but I don't have the time. Fortunately, Nicholas once more my saving grace, and he offered to help me out. So on Tuesday we're gonna go and hone the cylinders and also check and measure the pistons. So what I'm gonna do is put the engine back together so we can take it off the workbench, and then we can start rebuilding the chassis. Here's the freshly powder coated frame, makes such a big difference compared to before. So what I would like to start with are the center stand and the side stand. This looks nice. Okay, so the stands are back on the bike, so we can move on and install new swing arm bearings. I got the swing arm back, which had to be repainted because it had a little mistake. That got taken care of, and then the BMW shop reassembled the drive shaft because you have to use a special tool to lock it in place so you can properly torque the nut on the inside. But before that, I actually got the drive shaft bearings right here properly rebuilt, and compared to before, these bearings are now held in place with circlips, so should they ever have to be replaced, it's possible to do that. Next up, I'm gonna pack the bearings, and for that I'm gonna use Liqui Moly LM47. And it's important to use something like this and not wheel bearing grease, since there's no rotation going on here, just back and forth movement basically. Wheel bearing grease wouldn't reach the required temperature to actually work properly, so we're going to pack the bearings with this. Just put quite a lot of the grease in the palm of your hand and then work it in from the bottom up, and you know that you have enough in there once you can see it squeeze out at the top. Now that those are packed, we can put the new seals in. Just a little bit of grease on the seal itself, on this lip right here, and then the spacer goes in. And now I'm going to drive that in with a 30mm socket that fits right onto the metal part of the seal and not on the rubber part. Look at that, freshly painted and well-maintained parts with like new bearings and stuff like that, new rubber boots. So this is ready to go on the bike now. Now I need to tighten the pivot bolts so that the gap right here and on this side is exactly the same. Now we can put on the locking nuts, but not tighten those yet, because we need to first set the bearings to get the proper preload. For this to work, you have to screw both of the pins completely in so that there's no play in the swing arm. My little problem here was that I had a powder coat edge on the inside of the frame, and I thought that was already the contact point with the swing arm. But then when I wanted to torque that one down, it just pushed the swing arm all the way over. So you have to screw both of the pins all the way in until they're touching the swing arm, and it doesn't really matter how big the gaps are at the beginning. And then you start working both of the pins simultaneously to move the swing arm until you have the same gap on both sides. I have 4 millimeters on both sides. So now I'm actually going to install the locking nut on this side, torque that one down, and then hopefully when I torque the other pivot pin to 20 Newton meters to set the bearing preload, it doesn't push the whole swing arm over, but just tightens that one. That should work now. All right, now onto the other side, and we first torque the pin with 20 Newton meters, then loosen it immediately after and tighten it again with 10 Newton meters. Now to finish the rear, I quickly wanted to install the final drive, but unfortunately I just noticed that the locking rings that I ordered are too big, so they don't fit on the swing arm. So I'm gonna end this video right here. For how disastrous it started, I think we made good progress. I'm very happy with how everything is coming together. It's such a treat to have all of the nice looking and nicely working parts and put everything back together. So I can't wait for the rest of the assembly. I hope we can sort out the cylinder heads. I'm definitely going to keep you posted on that, and also on the pushrod tubes. So I hope you enjoyed this one. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.